with the NBA trade deadline of just a few days away, I'm going to give you guys one specific team, and I'm not going to give you guys what player that specific team that I'm going to mention, what that player, that team should look to acquire. But before I get started on that, I want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and tell a friend, tell a family member, tell whoever to support my channel. And as I stated in the intro, the NBA trade deadline is just a couple of days away, man. The NBA trade deadline is here. And, you know, the NBA season is cracking up, man. We're in the peak of NBA season. And like I said, the trade deadline is almost here, man. Just, you know, it starts on Thursday. That's when the trade deadline is. And so with that out of the way, man, I'm gonna give you guys a specific team. And I'm going to give you guys what player that specific team should look to acquire. And that specific team that I mentioned is the Detroit Pistons. And I'm here to tell you that the Detroit Pistons should look to trade for Michael Porter Jr. of the Brooklyn Nets. Yes, that's right. I said it. I believe that before the NBA trade deadline, the Detroit Pistons should look to acquire and go after and make a strong push to trade for Michael Porter Jr. of the Brooklyn Nets. Because I believe Michael Porter Jr. is exactly what the Detroit Pistons need. The Detroit Pistons have had a fantastic season. They're 36-12. They have the best record in the Eastern Conference. They have the second best record in the league. They are just rolling. They have been phenomenal. I mean, they're just cruising through the Eastern Conference, man. I mean, it's incredible what the Detroit Pistons have been doing. They play hard-nosed level defense. Cade Cunningham he's gonna make his All-Star team. He's looking like a guy that possibly should be an MVP candidate. Jalen Duren has also made an All-Star team. You got Isaiah Stewart. You got Sir Thompson. You know. They're getting contributions from random dudes like Janias Jenkins, a guy that they got on the two-way, right? Like they're getting, you know, Tobias Harris is a nice little veteran. Like they're just a really good basketball team when you're talking about the Detroit Pistons. And defensively, they're physical. They're the most physical team in the league. They just bruise you. They push you around. They rebound the ball. They protect the paint. Isaiah Stewart in particular, this dude, man, he's just an enforcer. He might be about 6'7", 6'8", but he plays like he's 7 feet tall. Like he just bullies you around, and he lets you hear about it too. He talks junk to your face while he does it. And so there's a lot to love about these Detroit Pistons. But I'm also here to tell you that they have a weakness. They have a flaw on their team. And that flaw is their perimeter shooting. They're not as great as Detroit is defensively, and as awesome as Cade Cunningham is, and as really good as Jalen Duren is, and Sir Thompson, and Isaiah Stewart, you know, Ron Holland, like Jenkins, like as good as all of these guys are for the Pistons, they need perimeter shooting. They're lacking in the perimeter shooting department. You know, you look at where they are statistically in the league when it comes to three-point shooting. They're third. They take the third fewest three-point attempts in the league. They're third lowest. The Detroit Pistons. They take the third fewest three-point attempts in the league, and they're ninth worst in three-point field goal percentage at 34.8. And so this is not a good shooting team. This is not a good perimeter shooting team. And when you go into the playoffs, your defenses are going to tighten up. They're going to be physical. They're going to know your tendencies, and they're going to know your weaknesses. And as great as the Pistons are defensively, there's going to become a point in time where you're going to have to put the ball in the hole. And you're going to have to make perimeter shots. And it's not going to be peaches and cream for Cade Cunningham all the time. And it's not going to always be on the hands of like Cade Cunningham to save the team. Like, you're going to have to make perimeter shots. That's where Michael Porter Jr. of the Brooklyn Nets comes in. Michael Porter Jr. of the Brooklyn Nets, if the Detroit Pistons was able to acquire him at the trading deadline, I think the Detroit Pistons would win the Eastern Conference. They would be clear favorites to win the Eastern Conference if they were able to acquire Michael Porter Jr. I think he would help that team that much. And speaking of Michael Porter Jr., as I stated in the last episode, this is a guy that I said should have been an all-star, that deserved to be an all-star. Michael Porter Jr., you look at the season he's averaging, the guy's averaging nearly 26 points a game. He's shooting 48% from the field, 40% from three. And the stuff that he was doing and that he's been doing for the Nets, I didn't see this version of him in Denver. I mean, this guy, Michael Porter Jr., this season for the Nets is looking like the guy I thought that he was in high school. Just making plays off the dribble, taking dudes off, finishing at the rim, hitting off the dribble threes, off movement, stand still, off screens, pin downs, crossing people up, hitting step back jumpers. Michael Porter Jr. has been lethal for the Brooklyn Nets, and I believe he'll be even better if you're able to get to the Detroit Pistons. I think he's exactly what the Pistons need. They need to trade for him, and by the way, I think Michael Porter Jr. should have been an all-star. I think he got snubbed from the all-star team when they named the all-star reserves the last night. Michael Porter Jr. should have been an all-star. And I think Michael Porter Jr., if he got traded to the Detroit Pistons, I think he would make a statement and showcase the world why he should have been an all-star, because I think he's perfect for that team. He's exactly what the Pistons need. And the trade that I came up with is, can you if you're the Detroit Pistons, can you give the Brooklyn Nets Tobias Harris, who's an expiring contract? Can you give them Karis LeVert, who has another year left on his deal? And can you give them 2 first-round picks? Can you give them this year's draft, this year's 2026 first-round pick, maybe top 3 protected or whatever? And can you give them the 2028 first-round pick? And you can make that top 3 protected. So you're talking about Tobias Harris, who's an expiring contract, Karis LeVert, who maybe you can flip later down the line. He's on a short-term contract. And could you give them 2 first-round picks? I think that's a pretty good deal for the Brooklyn Nets. 2 first-round picks in this NBA climate, I think it's pretty good. And for the Detroit Pistons, you get back Michael Porter Jr. I think it's a fair deal. Now, look, who knows with the Brooklyn Nets? There's a world where the Brooklyn Nets might look to keep Michael Porter Jr. Maybe they want to push things forward and want to compete next season. There's been some linkage of them going after Giannis. And so I don't know exactly where Brooklyn stands when it comes to their long-term, vision. Do they want to compete next season or do they want to continue to rebuild their team? I don't know where that stands on that front, but if you're the Brooklyn Nets and if your intentions are to just rebuild and just keep building with your young guys, I think it might behoove them to trade. I think it'll behoove them to trade Michael Porter Jr. at the deadline. Especially to a team like the Detroit Pistons, who can give them some good, interesting stuff from a draft pick standpoint. And so, I'm just here. I'm just here to help teams, man. Like I'm just here to throw out some suggestions, because I'm a basketball lover, man. I love me some basketball. I watch the NBA all the time, and I love the idea of Michael Porter Jr. on the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, could you imagine Michael Porter, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Ausar Thompson, Michael Porter Jr., Isaiah Stewart? That's looking like a legit squad to me. I'm here to tell y'all that squad would be legit. Cade Cunningham, Michael Porter Jr., Ausar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren. I like that squad. I like that. I really do. I like that squad for the Detroit Pistons. And I think it would make I think it would make some real sense for the Pistons to make a run at Michael Porter Jr. You put Michael Porter Jr. with Cade Cunningham and you put him with that Detroit Pistons team, I think the Pistons win the East. I do. I think the Detroit Pistons are a Michael Porter Jr. trade away from winning the Eastern Conference. I really believe that, because you look at how they're built defensively, the toughness, the culture that JB Bickerstaff has built with that team. And you got a leader like Cade Cunningham, who's a dog, who's clutch, who's versatile, who's a elite scorer and playmaker, who's not afraid of the big moment. You put Michael Porter Jr. on that team, I think it could be special in Detroit, Michigan. It really could be. It could be really special in Detroit if they were able to get their hands on Michael Porter Jr. and you're able to pair him with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, and the rest of that squad. I'm just saying. And so, like I said, if you're the Detroit Pistons, look, it's nice that you have the record that you have, but don't be content, man. The Eastern Conference is wide open. It's wide open. You don't get many of these opportunities, daily when you have the best record in the East and you have a chance to get better. If you see a weakness on your team, attack it. If you see a flaw on your team that you noticed, attack it. Don't sit still. Be aggressive. And I think the Detroit Pistons should be a little more aggressive, and I think they should go for it. Now, going for it don't mean give up the kitchen sink. I'm not saying they need to go after Giannis. I'm not saying you need to give up your whole young team or anything like that. But if you can give up a couple of picks and a couple of expiring contracts, and you can make a solid upgrade, why not? Why not? I think the Detroit Pistons should go for it. I think they should make a run at Michael Porter Jr. of the Brooklyn Nets. And I think Michael Porter Jr. would make an instant impact for those Detroit Pistons. And I think Michael Porter Jr. with Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart and Asir Thompson, I think he can get them to that next level. And I think they can win the Eastern Conference and go to the NBA Finals if it happens. That's how I feel. That's what I believe. And let's see what the Detroit Pistons do at the deadline. And that's all I have. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Talk soon. Peace.